Now, I know I am 30 years late to this show, with Neon Genesis Evangelion releasing in 1995, but beneath all of the 90s anime aesthetic, making me nostalgic for a time I didn't even live in, is the unique character studies it presents, and its really bizarre ending that quickly propelled this anime to be one of my favorite television shows of all time. A story that on the surface feels like a classic take on Japanese mecha, but is deeply embedded with analysis of human behavior. And at the end of the day, I don't know what is more complex, the characters or what order to watch the film spanning from 1997 all the way to 2021, including all of their various canon endings, of course. With this being said, I have only watched the television show, and I finished watching it a couple days ago, so I am taking that as the true ending to the story of Neon Genesis Evangelion. Looking at the story at face value, the year is, yes, 2015, which back in 1995 was considered the future, which is set 15 years after a global disaster called the Second Impact. The story takes place in the fortified city of Tokyo 3. It follows Shinji Ikari, a young boy who is recruited by his father, Gendo Ikari, to join the organization called NER. Shinji is tasked with piloting an Evangelion, a giant biomedical robot, to combat creatures known as angels. The story of the world in Neon Genesis Evangelion is purposefully fragmented, revealing elements of the world in pieces, rather than laying it out in a linear or comprehensive way. I felt like as I was watching this story play out, I felt as though I was speculating on the broader narrative of this series. Instead of receiving clear exposition, I was left to piece together a world that had already been scarred by catastrophe. Hints of environmental collapse, the melting of the polar ice caps, as well as just the loss of half of humanity, is used as background details rather than central revelations. This storytelling approach forces us into the same position as the characters, disoriented, speculating, and searching for meaning in a world that feels broken and incomplete. It follows the philosophy of showing the world and its characters interacting with it, rather than the characters always talking about it. After all, they have experienced this world and it has formed who they are. Now, it is easy to get sucked into the depth of the story, but what actually draws you into Neon Genesis Evangelion is the characters, and how each are defined less by who they are on their own, and more by how they fail and struggle to connect with each other. Each one carries deep psychological wounds shaped by trauma, abandonment, and the crushing weight of expectations. When these characters are forced to interact, their flaws don't cancel each other out. Instead, they collide, creating a cycle of miscommunication, resentment, and fleeting moments of vulnerability. The environment only enforces the flaws of these characters. Shinji is defined by the absence of love, affirmation, and security. He was abandoned by his father after the death of his mother. Shinji ends up growing up internalizing that rejection is proof of his own worthlessness. Everything Shinji does is reactive, and it's all due to what other people are doing in this fear of rejection. He is driven by a desperate need for approval. Shinji's lack of self-confidence and chronic withdrawal mirrors the broader uncertainty of a civilization barely holding itself together. His depression, hesitation, and constantly self-loathing are not simply personal flaws. They are inevitable scars of a child raised without stability in a society that values survival and utility over compassion. Shinji, because of his flaws, becomes an emotional punching bag for Asuka, and then their volatile dynamic is all driven by their mutual need for validation. While other characters like Rei show off his lack of ability to have intimacy, Rei feels both emotionally empty, which both excites Shinji but also terrifies him. And then his lack of ability to become close with someone is also exemplified with Misato, who both kind of acts as a maternal figure for him in this series, while also just tightly walking the line between kind of an irresponsible friend, which ultimately just further confuses Shinji. Now, Rei as a character is completely shaped by a world that treats human beings like their tool. Rei's environment actually denies her the ability to have a self at all. She feels hollow and empty. Asuka is one of my favorite characters in the series, but she acts in complete contrast to Rei and Shinji. She is a storm of pride and hostility. Beneath her outside facade is an equally fragile core. Her need to be the most confident person in the room is all forged from this deep-rooted childhood trauma. But let's be honest, due to the Second Impact and where each of these pilots' parents were, they all have these deeply flawed childhoods. with Rei having an even more bizarre childhood. Asuka learns early on that her value comes from her performance and recognition rather than just unconditional love. In this devastated world, the survival of the fittest mindset is only reinforced, and only the strong are remembered. Asuka's arrogance then is not natural confidence, but an armor she builds to keep others from seeing her desperation for acknowledgement. Her hostility towards Shinji and Rei reflects this as well. Shinji's passivity infuriates her because it mirrors the weakness she fears in herself, while Rei's composure taunts her with this calm mindset she can never achieve. Asuka clings to superiority as the only way to prove she deserves to exist. Together, Shinji, Rei, and Asuka are not just flawed individuals. They are case studies on how trauma and abandonment by a broken world creates broken people. Each represents a different response to the same environment. Shinji collapses inward, Rei becomes erased, and Asuka lashes out. Their flaws are less personal failures, but instead are a representation of a world where human connection is changed by fear, loss, and very much at the forefront, survival. The characters can be somewhat annoying at times, but are all filled with flaws created by the world around them. They're not your broad, slice-of-life characters, yet at times the show does try to fit them into these stereotypes just to show how far off they are. They idealize those slice-of-life aesthetic as they try to fit into those different roles. And when those scenes come up, you see this direct shift in music. And you definitely see this at the end with the trippy montage where it kind of cuts into Shinji interacting with his class the way a slice of life show would. The world feels bleak. A lot of the shots are also just super vast, and it's rarely filled with people. A city, Tokyo 3, should be bustling with people, but when Shinji stands at the train station, there's no one to be found. The only other characters we truly see around them are people in Nerve and the classmates in the classroom. We feel equally as trapped as a viewer as Shinji does. And this is even further pushed with the sound of the brutal heat and cicadas. Yes, all of the character development is fantastic, but is the abstract and artful ending that cements for me Neon Genesis Evangelion to be regarded as one of the most acclaimed anime series in history, leaving a lasting impact on the industry. The final 2 episodes feel controversial, concluding the story with puzzles and abstraction. Yes, this ending was put more in context with the 1997 film, but I find the original ending to be more interesting. It feels more true to the story and its themes and storytelling formats. The deep dive into the interworking of our lead character, Shinji, as the minds of the worlds get melded into one, he finally finds peace as the two inner dialogue between his 2 narratives converse back and forth till the series concludes with the perspective on Shinji's inner peace. The ending is beautiful, not only from a story standpoint, but from all of the abstract cuts and experimental animation. It has lingered in my mind as I'm still trying to piece together this story, and it just works and adds so much extraordinary depth. If it just ended like a normal story does, I feel like it wouldn't have the same lingering effect, as well as I would be questioning a lot less. The story also ends on this very positive note that to me feels very good. Along with its abstract nature, it shows Shinji finally becoming okay with himself and being able to open up to others. But what makes this series so remarkable is not which version of the ending one considers to be definitive. Whether through the disjointed world building or the ambiguity of the ending, the series thrives on forcing its audience into discomfort, leaving us like Shinji forced to find meaning in a fragmented reality. I actually just started reading the manga, and I heard that it actually has another alternate ending and doesn't really follow the show, so I'll be fascinated to get yet another ending to this story. I'm excited to check it out.